hopefully it got you a good laugh there. But I do want to talk about the main topic of the show. It's not as funny. It's just fascinating. Um, let's see here. So we want to go with the Miss Unsinkable. That's her nickname. This is the story of Violet Jessop. She was a nurse on a few ships that are pretty famous for either almost sinking or sinking through like big history moments. As you can see here on this title cover here, one of them is the Titanic. So when you came on the show before I talked about her, did you know about Violet?
No, no. In fact, even backstage, I was like, "You mean the unsinkable Molly Brown?" That's one
Different
of the
person. Yep,
different
different person.
person. But
Mhm.
apparently, this is
This
a
is
new.
a completely different person. Molly
Mhm.
Brown was a person who did not sink on the, who made literally was rich on the Titanic, made a lot of money after sinking, not sinking, and all that kind of stuff. This lady was so I'll just give you a brief history. Um, she was born clearly as she was. It was from she was a survivor really from the start. So she had a lot of good luck, and then she had some bad luck. Um, so she was one of 9 children. Only 6 of them survived. Um, Violet being the first. When she
Mhm.
was a child, she contracted tuberculosis, and through doctors predicted her illness would be fatal, but she survived. So not only did she survive 3 sunken ships, um, she survived tuberculosis. So it should come to as no shock that she also survived the most famous ocean disaster of all time, the sinking of the Titanic. What might be a surprise is that she also survived, like I said, collisions and a sinking of the Titanic's 2 sister ships. So she was on the Titanic, and because she worked for the company that ran those ships, so she was on the Olympic, and she was also on the Britannic. So she was a nurse. She would That's what her job was on the ship. She wasn't anyone famous. She wasn't on there as a passenger. She just worked for the crew. So you didn't know anything about Violet here at all.
Mm-mm. No, I mean the fact that she survived TB. I mean, back then, TB during her time was tragic. Like as soon as you contracted it, it was like you're waiting for death. I mean, it was really terrible. It was a terrible illness.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
So
then
she
and then to
survived
be
that.
surviving that, and then also become a nurse. Obviously, she probably got a little inspired from that.
Hmm.
Um, and then to be not only on the Titanic, but the Britannic and Olympic. Man, she's just a total badass to be able to deal
Yeah,
with that. I
yeah,
mean, that's those are scary events. I mean, back
yeah.
especially back then. I mean,
Hmm.
because that was the only way
Yeah.
to travel across
It
the ocean.
was. It was. They weren't doing transatlantic planes.
Mm,
Yeah. So there, 1900s was a bad time. So she worked for White Star Line. That's the one that owned all the 3 ships.
mhm,
Um, but she was okay, sorta. So in 1910, after working with as a stewardess with the Royal Mail Line for 2 years, she took the job on board the Olympic. The
mhm,
Olympic was a luxury ship, so this is a sister ship,
mhm,
the largest civilian liner at its time, so this is before the Titanic. It in the fall of 1911, the Olympic left its port in Southampton and collided with a British warship, the HMS Hawke. There were no fatalities, and despite damage sustained by the impact, the ship made it back to port without sinking. So this one didn't sink, but she did. She was a part of this massive accident with this. I think she also did help people on that boat. So yeah, you can see it kind of does look like the Titanic if you like put them side by side. They're
mhm.
almost identical.
I know there are theories out there, that say that the ship that actually did go down was the actual Britannic and not, the Titanic.
Yeah, they
Um,
switched them. Hmm.
mhm,
Yeah, there's a theory there. There's
yeah.
also a theory that Rose murdered Jack, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened. Uh, but after experiencing the most almost sinking of another of the Olympic, she would you would think she would not want to go on another boat, right? You think I'm
Right.
done. I don't want to do this anymore. However, she was fine. So she said, "I'm going to still do this transatlantic sea travel." However, just 7 months later, she was back at work with the White Star Line. This time on what they claimed was the most unsinkable ship. So I think they kind of tested fate on that one, right?
Mhm.
And then Jessup boarded the RMS Titanic, a stewardess for 4 days before its famous run in with the iceberg. in her memoirs, she mentioned that she was ordered up on deck to serve as an example of how to behave for non-English speaking um, passengers who couldn't understand the instructions being given to them. So she was like a decoy. She pretended to be a passenger,
Hmm.
pretending to, because so when someone would give orders, she was like, okay, this is what you're supposed to do
Hmm.
for everybody that was on the ship that maybe didn't speak English. That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah, so she did that. And then, of course, when she was or when it was started to sink, she was ordered up on deck. She wrote calmly in her memoirs that calmly passengers strolled about. I stood at the bulkhead with the other stewardesses, watching the women clinging to their husbands before being put into the boats with their children sometime after. A ship's officer ordered us into the boat 16, first to show some women it was safe. So she was told to just, again, they couldn't speak English, so she was supposed to say, "Look, I'm getting on the boat. What's all get on the boat?" And most of them were just walking around like, "What do we do on
Yeah.
this ship that's not supposed to sink?"
Yeah,
Um,
ship that's not supposed to sink and that's already sinking. So I mean, like, yeah, I mean, and the thing is with a nurse in her position, and especially those who are staff, you're not supposed to panic.
right,
It-
right, right,
so,
right.
because if you panic, it causes worse things. So you need to be able to. I mean, can you imagine something like that?
Yeah, right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. I remember the movie, and I remembered how it was pretty like real life, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So sorry, my kid. But yeah, you could
I like how you snuck that in. I saw it with my kid.
yeah, look, he likes to come by the door. But you saw how calm some people were. You saw how people were like really confused. You saw how people were scared. One of the like most epic scenes ever was the ones with the people playing the instruments as it was going down. So that's pretty cool. That was pretty neat of them to do that to keep people calm, even though they knew they're not going to survive. That was pretty heroic, I think. But
Mhm.
as she watched the lifeboats, as she watched as the lifeboats were loaded and made it onto herself after spending one night in a lifeboat, Jessup and her fellow survivors were rescued by the Carpatha, and that's the little one up above there. So that
Mhm.
she was on that ship too, and that's the one that saved them. So there you go. That's the second one that she survived.
Mhm.
Um, the third one, yet again, despite witnessing the tragedy of the Titanic and spending the night in a freezing lifeboat, Violet continued to serve as a stewardess. So she was pretty dedicated to her craft, right?
Right.
Just wanted to help people. She thought that was her goal. That's where she wanted to be. In 1916, during World War One, the White Star Line converted some of their ships into hospitals. So this is the Britannic. One of these converted ships was, and you said there are some theories that this was the actual Titanic, not the
Mhm.
one that sunk.
Not that
Uh,
not that I mean, I've just heard of these theories. I have not specifically looked into them, but I've heard, like, these are, like, theories that have been going on for, like, forever.
a long time, yeah. Upon which Jessup was serving as a stewardess again for the Red Cross. So she was on this ship doing the same
Mhm.
job. It's a pretty cool looking ship. It would be really bright to see. I like that painting there that I found, and yeah, you would if you were in trouble and you saw this white ship coming around to save you. I think I would be pretty excited. Um,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah. So on the morning of November 21st, the Britannic sank in the Arganic Sea due to a mysterious explosion. So they don't even know at the point, they didn't know what it was. To this day, scientists have yet to reach definite conclusion as what caused the blast. Some people say it was a torpedo or a mine from the German, but it did hit something or something hit it.
It's
Uh,
probably believable that it was a mine. I would say that
I would say so. Yeah,
because
yeah.
if
I
it's
don't think
World War
it.
One, U-boats. I mean, submarines were there available, but it was mostly. I would say it's probably mostly a mine. But
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure it was. So the the white pride of the ocean's medical world dipped her head. So this is what she wrote in her memoirs again. Our head a little, then a little lower and a little slower. She recalls. So she's talking about the ship kind of sinking very slow.
mm,
All the deck machinery fell into the sea like a child's toy. Then she
mm,
took a fearful plunge. Her stern rearing heads into the feet into the air until her final roar. She disappeared into the depths. So same like just like the Titanic, it just went down, but she survived it. There's a picture of it
Wow.
underwater, how it was sinking. It took 57 minutes to sink. 30 people lost their lives, nearly taking Jessop's life as well. So she barely made it. As the ship sank, the propellers were still spinning and began sucking lifeboats under them. Jessop jumped out of her lifeboat to safety, but survived a traumatic head injury in the process.
Oof.
So see how lucky she is. Yeah. Here she goes. She wrote this. I leapt into the water, but I was sucked under the ship's keel, which struck my head. She wrote, described an incident in her memoirs. I escaped, but the years later, when I went to my doctor because of headaches, he discovered I had once sustained a fracture of the skull. So she fractured her skull, did not know,
Wow.
and then like went on with her merry day or life and had no idea that she did that. And she just kept getting headaches and realizing that, hey, you got a cat. Look at that. I got one
Yeah,
too.
I'm sorry. She's a wants to say hello. So
You have a cat and a puppy too, right? Didn't you get a puppy?
yep. He's downstairs. So
Okay.
this one's only allowed upstairs right now. So
Okay. Yeah, I got
uh,
one in the chair here. So,
yep.
um, yeah, they're fun. Let's see here. After
Oh, she is
surviving,
very beautiful.
she
Wow.
was, yeah, she was. She was a very beautiful woman. After surviving one near sinking and two actual sinking, many expected Violet Jessop to retire from her life at sea. However, after a brief hiatus, she returned to work for the White Star Line in 1920 and later the Red Star Line.
Hmm.
During the rest of her seafaring career, Violet would complete two around the world cruises and have had a short lived marriage before retiring to Great Ashfield in Suffolk, where she passed away at the ripe old age of 83.
So
So
she
she,
lived she lives through hell and back and still
mhm.
lived a good healthy life. I mean,
Can you imagine her stories like if she had grandkids?
oh my gosh, yes. I mean, what a remarkable woman and
Hmm.
just to survive all of that. I mean, TB as a child for one, and three sinkings and famous one. I mean, those are famous ones,
Hmm.
obviously.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it that and to have the mark to prove it, as in the fracture in her skull.
Yeah, she's
So,
not many people talk about her. I think if they redid a movie, they kind of redid Titanic or they redid some story about the Titanic, I think her story would be pretty cool. Like if they
you
showed
know,
her story over time, I think that
you're
would be.
you're right. If you really wanna do Hollywood, if you really wanna do strong, independent women, there you go. You've got somebody in, in history. I mean, not necessarily doesn't necessarily have to be independent, but she survived
Mhm.
3
Yep.
sinkings. I mean, that is something else. What a story that could be on the big screen, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it
Just
would have been, but it would be really cool. I think it would be a really good story for people, but not many people know about her. Not many
no.
people know her story. When you talk about Miss Unsinkable, they automatically jump to Unsinkable Molly Brown, but I would classify her as the
The re
true, the real
I
Unsinkable.
I agree with that. Well,